Hi, guys. Welcome to Motivational Monday. Today, I want to talk about the cycle of abuse. So, we all know that October is Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. And as this being the last Monday in October, I wanted to dedicate today to talking about it. But I want to talk about abuse in a way that most people don't. So, we often think of abuse being physical, and a lot of times, I believe abuse occurs under the pretense that as long as I'm not beating you or violating you sexually, then what's the issue? Even to the extent I had an ex say to me, "Well, I've never hit you, so what's your problem?" You're abusive, sir, so we need to cut this tie like now. And it made me realize that a lot of times there's a lot of abuse going on within any type of relationship, whether it is relational or family or friends or work. There's many different relationship dynamics in which I believe abuse occurs on an everyday basis, and we're really just not talking about it. And this is not to minimize in any way those who have gone through physical or sexual abuse, because it is a very real issue in our society and community. I just want to also open your eyes to the reality that abuse can look very different from what we traditionally think of. So, as I'm going through these topics and looking at the different cycles of abuse, I want you to really evaluate from a place of, am I being an abuser, or am I a victim of abuse, and do I need to minimize someone's access to me in any shape, form, or fashion? Because ultimately, no one should be tolerating abuse and no one should be being abusive. And so I want you to really have an open mind as we go through some of these topics of conversation to make sure that you don't allow abuse into your world. So the cycle of abuse begins with tension building. And so that includes stress from building from the pressures of life. In this stage, the abuser feels ignored, threatened, annoyed, or wronged in some manner. And typically, the victim will either try to reduce the stress or the tension by becoming compliant or nurturing, or they'll take the other extreme and just provoke the abuser just to get what's coming. I'd rather just get it over and done with. Let's just handle this now. Go ahead and do whatever it is that you're going to do. The next phase of the cycle of abuse is the actual. And so I want to discuss the different types of abuse beyond what physical and sexual abuse looks like. So there's the abuse of authority and power, bullying, character assassination, discriminatory abuse based on age, race, social class, disability status, marital status, whatever the case, emotional abuse, financial abuse, intimidation, religious abuse, which is using religious beliefs against people, and basically and beating people up in the name of Jesus, because I don't think that's what Jesus wanted us to do. But also stalking. And there's a long list of types of abuse, but these are some of the ones that I think are more common than we realize. And as I was going through the list, I realized these things happen every day, but we don't really view them as abuse. And it is, and it's unhealthy. And these are not the type of dynamics that you should be having in your relationship with anyone. The next phase in the cycle of abuse is reconciliation and the honeymoon phase. A lot of affection, there's a elaborate apology and promises to change. The abuser usually feels guilt or remorse, or fear that the victim will leave. The victim usually feels pain, fear, humiliation, and may mistakenly feel responsible. That last part is so huge, especially with physical and even sexual abuse. A lot of times you'll hear victims say that they provoked the abuser, or it's their fault, or just having that thought process that they did something to bring this upon themselves. And that really is the most in my opinion, that's the worst part about this cycle of abuse, is because if you're convinced that you're doing something to provoke someone to abuse you, not only will it continue in this relationship, but if you have the strength to move forward, it's likely to happen in another relationship as well, because and then you'll start to um likely to abuse you. And really and truly, it's the mindset that you think you deserved it somehow. And I really, really hope, and I really, really am praying that anyone who is in an abusive situation recognizes it's not your fault. It's actually more of an issue with them than it is with you. And you do not have to tolerate it. You really, really don't. So the last phase of the cycle, calm phase. Typically, the relationship dynamic is relatively calm and peaceful. And in this phase, usually the abuser may agree to counseling, ask for forgiveness, or begin to create a normal atmosphere. However, interpersonal difficulties will inevitably arise, ends again with the tension building phase. So it ends up just being a repeat cycle that pretty much never ends. But you have to learn what your value is and learn what you will or will not tolerate in your life and create healthy boundaries. And I want everyone to stop looking at abuse as only being physical or only being sexual. Those are not the only types of abuse that exist in this world. And even just how we interact with one another, even with the way in which we speak to one another, if it's not healthy, it's not okay. And we have to take a stance and stand up for ourselves and be able to say, listen, I'm not willing to tolerate it. That's it, that's all. And you just have to get on board with that. So if anyone is dealing or struggling with being in an abusive situation, please, 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 please seek help. There's help for everything you could be possibly dealing with. And I really, really hope you seek that help. I would encourage either side of that abuse cycle to go get some therapy. Therapy is a beautiful thing. And not only that, it helps you work through some of the issues that are triggering whatever it is that's causing you, whether the problem being is this is how you saw when you were raised and this is what you saw as your norm. Whatever the reasoning is, you need help to process that. And I really wish people didn't think of therapy as being for crazy people, when really it's for everyday issues that we face, and it's for helping you get through some of those problems. So again, please, 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 if you've ever been on either side of those abuse cycle phases, just get help, please. All right.